In the intro to Fusion 360, we went over sketches, extrusions, cuts, and revolves. In this tutorial, I want to take it a step further to show you some of the more advanced tools that you have at your disposal within Fusion 360. Now, logically, the next tool to show you is the sweep. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to come over here to our front plane on our view cube. And as you already know, we need to start a sketch. That's what we went over in the first lesson. So I'm going to create a sketch here on the front. Click on center diameter circle and place it right there on the origin and drag out. And you can make it really whatever dimension you want. I'm going to make this 2 inches. And from here, what we want to do is we want to turn our view cube to the right because we're now going to create a second sketch. So here I am going to look for my YZ plane, that's the right plane. And I'm going to create a sketch on this plane. And from here, I'm going to take a line, place it on the origin and drag out. And I'm also going to drag an arc and do the same. As you can see, I have my line and my arc, and they're attached to the origin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to orbit, I'm going to click on it, and I can rotate this whole thing, this whole sketch. And you can see that my 2 lines are now on the same origin as my circle, which we learned again in the first lesson, how that works. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to finish the sketch. And you can see the plane came up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to create. We're going to come down to our sweep. And I'm going to click on this profile. And I'm going to click here to select the path. And for path, I'm going to select just the line, and it's going to select both lines at once. And as you can see, if I hit OK, it's going to create this sort of tube, this sweep, a swept tube shape. So the thing to understand here is within our swept tube shape, if I go back to our feature here in the feature manager tree, I'm going to double click on the sweep feature. I can change the orientation. So instead of being perpendicular, I can actually change this to be parallel. Now let me explain what orientation is. Orientation is how this face is oriented to the line, the path line. That's called the path. So we have our profile, that's the circle we made, and we have the path, which is the line that we made, which is really composed of a line and an arc. But anyway, it's just the path. It's the line that we made that this profile follows. So right now, this circle here in the end and this circle here at the beginning, they're perpendicular to the line. So if I look at this from the right, you can see that this is perpendicular. There's an arc here, and this line is perpendicular to the arc. That being said, let's see what happens when I change this from perpendicular to parallel. You're going to see all of a sudden now it's just parallel to the ground. It's now parallel to the plane, parallel to the ground. However you want to think about it, it's not perpendicular anymore. So I'm going to show you that again, perpendicular and parallel. And you can see here that you can change the distance. So if I play around with this and I make it 0.5, you're going to see that it only has the sweep go 0.5 of the whole line. So really, you can think about that as sort of like a percentage. You would have 0 as being 0%, and then you have 1.0 as being 100%. I don't usually use this distance. I usually just use the lines that I make, and I dimension the lines that I make, and that's what I use to control how long my sweep is. Now here we did chain selection. What is chain selection? Well, chain selection means that if I turn this off, I can select just one path at once. So I can select just this piece of the two lines. I can select just the straight line, not the arced line. Or I can just select the arced line. Or I can select the straight line and hold down Shift and select the arced line. So that's chain selection. It just allows you to select a whole chain of lines. And here we have the option to either do this as a single path or a path with a guide rail or a path with a guide surface. Now we're not going to get into this just yet. This is a little bit more advanced. We're just going to stay with single path for now. And single path is just what it sounds like. You have a guide line and then you have your profile, the path and the profile. So here under operation, we have either new body or join, cut, and intersect. Just like we saw in the extrusion part of our first part of this video series, you can either make this a cut, an intersection, or a join. So right now, this is a new body because this is the first body in our part. We have to have a body before we can do any cut or anything like that. So that is the sweep. So within the sweep, another thing that we can do is we can change the original profile. So what I can do is I can double click on this sketch, or right click, edit sketch. And what I can do is just add kind of another sort of aspect to this sketch. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a couple of lines here. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just connect these two. And I'm going to use trim, which is a sketch feature here, and I'm just going to trim these two lines. And that's what it's going to leave me with. So we're just going to kind of experiment with this. Now I'm going to click on my sweep profile, and for the path, for the profile, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect this profile, this piece of the profile. So as you can see, my sweep has now changed because I've only selected part of the profile. That being said, if I go back to my sweep again, I can select only that profile. So now you can see that I only have this piece. So that's the thing about it. You can always alter your first sketch and make edits to it. So before it was just a circle. You can actually see that. But then we added this closed shape. As long as it's a closed shape that's either connected to the outer shape or that's within the shape, it will still work. So I can show you that just one more time. I can deselect this under profile, and you're going to see that now there is a swept hole inside of my part. You can actually look inside and see that. So that is our sweep, and that's how it works. And I can always go back and change it once more. And that is the way that the tool works. So the next thing that we want to look at is the loft. Now, this is a little bit more advanced. There's more that can kind of go wrong with a loft than with a sweep. With a sweep, you really only have two things that you're choosing. You're choosing the original profile, which was the circle, and then you're choosing the path. Now, let's just start a new part here. We're going to create a loft in this tutorial. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to top. Now I'm looking at the top of my part, and I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to select this plane right here because this is the top plane. And you can see I didn't even go up here to the origin planes. I just selected the plane that I saw. So here I'm just going to make a circle. I'm going to make it 4 inches. And we're going to hit finish. And what we're going to do from here is we're actually going to create our own plane. So come to construct, and we're going to hit offset plane. And I'm going to select the same plane that I used to make the circle. And I'm just going to drag this up. We can look at this from the side to see how much we're going to drag up by. I'm going to make it about 2 inches. So what have we done so far? We created a sketch. We made it on the top plane. And after we made a sketch of a circle on the top plane that's connected to the origin, what we did was we offset our own plane from the top plane. So I came to construct, offset plane, and I offsetted a plane. Okay, so now that you're here, what you're going to do is going to select this plane and hit create sketch. And now we're in our sketch. And if you'll notice, I did not come to the view cube to look at the top. If I want to, I can just start working from right here. I can make my sketch right here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to select this, and I'm going to drag out a circle that's 1.5 inches. So as you can see, we now have our 2 sketches. And now I'm going to do something very interesting. I'm going to come to origin, and I'm going to come to our, let's just say the YZ plane, because that cuts through everything. I'm going to come to the YZ plane, and I'm going to begin a sketch on this plane. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to where it says fit point spline. We haven't really done much work with splines at all. Now that's okay. What we're going to do here is very simple. It's really not going to be a big deal, even though it uses a very advanced spline tool. We're going to click on it, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click a couple times to place this spline, which as you can see is just a curvy line type thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect it to these sketches. So what I'm going to do is select the sketch, select the point, and click on coincident. And that's going to automatically connect this point to the end of the sketch. And you can also, it automatically kind of creates this projected line. You can just kind of make that a construction by coming over here to the sketch palette and clicking on construction. And if I'm going a little bit too fast, let me know in the comments and we can work over any sort of issues that you're facing. I'm happy to answer questions that you have in the comments. So here, we connected this point to this sketch. Now we're going to do the same thing here on the bottom. So I'm going to take this line and I'm just going to drag down the point until I'm very close here. So I'm going to click on the sketch. I'm going to click on this point, the end point, and I'm just going to hit coincident. And now they're coincident. Look at that. So I'm going to finish my sketch and we're going to try something here. We're going to see if it works. So what we have is we have 2 sketches and they're right on top of each other. And if you'll notice, both circles are on the origin. So they're both perfectly, the centers of the circles are perfectly aligned right now. And so we created a spline that connects to both ends of the circle. And what we're going to do here is we're going to come to create, and we're going to come down to our loft. And okay, I know this looks a little bit complicated, but it's really going to be easy. I'm going to show you how to do this. So for profiles, well, let me actually start by saying there are profiles and there are rails, okay? A profile is exactly like what we did before with the sweep. A profile is a closed shape that's used to create the shape of the loft. The rail just controls the way that the profiles connect to each other. So I'm going to go over an example right now. I'm going to select this profile because it is a profile. And I'm going to select this profile. So I just selected the two circles just now. That's what it looks like so far. So that's what it looks like now. Now check this out. I'm going to come down to rails. I'm going to hit the plus sign here to add a rail. And I'm going to click on this rail. And all of a sudden, it has connected my profiles to that rail. And as you can see, it has changed the whole profile of what we had before into a profile that follows my rail. So we're going to hit OK for now. And just to clarify, here's what our part looks like right now. Now we're going to try something a little bit interesting. What I want to do is I want to create, first of all, I'm just going to delete what we just did. And let me just show these sketches. I'm going to create a second sketch now. So I'm going to come over here to the right plane, which is the YZ plane, create a sketch. And from here, what we're going to do is we're going to make another spline. And this one is going to be also, a crazy looking shape. And you can also kind of control the spline, but I don't want to get too much into this. I just want to show you an example. So I'm just going to kind of go like this. And we're going to come down to create. And we're going to come down to our loft. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to select both profiles. And for the rails, I'm going to select our first rail that we used before. Whoops, I did that for the profile. Bear with me here, folks. There was a bit of an error here on the selections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the profile. This is profile 1, this is profile 2. Okay, great. It worked that time. So now that I selected both profiles, I'm going to come down to rails and I'm going to select this rail. And I'm also going to select the second rail. Now, as you can see, it has used both rails to control the shape of the loft. And the amazing thing about this, if I hit OK, the amazing thing about this is that it's actually blending the surface using those two sketches. So as you can see, it's blended. It's the part is much larger in this area than it is this area. And I can always go back and edit my sketch. So I can go back and I can make my sketch look like this. And you can see that I've edited the sketch and edited the shape as a result, because the shape is dependent on the sketch. Now, what I can do is I can actually do modeling using this. I can take my sketches and move them around and change them. And really, if I play around with this, I can do all sorts of things to create, say, a product or a piece or a part or 3D printed something. So you can see that I've actually created a whole shape using this, a shape that can be used for a product. So the Loft is very powerful. It's a very powerful tool. And when you pair it with things like the fillet, and when you pair it with things like extruding, you can create all sorts of shapes and parts. You can see here, I've developed this sort of interesting shape. So one more thing we're going to go over before we're done here is I want to add one more profile. I'm going to roll back and I'm going to start a sketch here on the on the XY plane. And I'm going to add a third here of these splines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this sketch and I'm going to select this point and I'm going to make them coincident, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So now they're connected. And now that that is done, let me show you the other. Now that that's done, we now have 3 different splines. So I'm gonna just edit, I'm gonna edit this spline here. I'm gonna move this back. So let me just show you this again. We're gonna cycle through. We see that we have 3 splines and they're all connected to the top circle. Now I'm gonna try to make a loft and we're gonna see what happens. So I'm gonna click on profile 1. I'm gonna click on profile 1, click on profile 2. Now, as you can see, it's making a loft between just these 2 profiles. But we're gonna add our rails now, and that's gonna influence the shape. So I'm gonna select this rail, that influences the shape. Now I'm gonna select this rail, that influences the shape further. And then I'm gonna select the 3rd rail, and that influences it once again. So as you can see, I have 3 rails, and they're all influencing the shape. And you could even add more rails than I have. You can create a new sketch and just make it at whatever angle you want within here. So as you can see, we've really influenced our shape a lot by using guide rails. So what I want to try to do here just for fun is I'm going to start my first rail as being very smooth. And then I'm going to make my second rail a little bit harsher. Going to be a little bit more of a radical shape. And then the 3rd rail here, I'm going to make even larger than that. So as you can see, I have a progressively larger part because of this. So I have my first rail, which is the least radical, then the second one, which is even more bulbous, and then the 3rd one is really large, and it creates a growth on the side. So you can kind of play around with this, and you can do some experimentation and mess around with your splines, and this is a really fun way to get practice on all the types of crazy shapes that you can make with this. So be sure to have fun. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And this is part 2 of the series. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, you can check that out. I'll have a link in the description, or you can just look into my videos for Fusion for Beginners part 1. This is part 2 of that. And like and subscribe for more content just like this. Thank you.